Genghis Khan, born as Temujin in the harsh steppes of Mongolia, rose from poverty to become one of the most powerful rulers in history. His empire stretched across Asia and into Europe, reshaping the world map. Yet, behind this story of conquest and military genius lies a quieter but equally powerful force, his daughters. These women, often overlooked in traditional accounts, played a decisive role in stabilizing and governing the empire. Without them, Genghis Khan's dream of expansion may have faltered before it truly began. The Mongol world was shaped by endless war, brutal winters, and the constant struggle for survival. Nomadic life demanded resilience from both men and women. Unlike many medieval societies, women on the steppes held more responsibilities and freedoms. They managed herds, negotiated marriages, and sometimes even led clans. This culture prepared Genghis Khan's daughters to step into roles of authority. When their father conquered new territories, they were not just married off as ornaments, they became rulers, governors, and key political figures in his empire. Historians long ignored the achievements of these daughters because Mongol chronicles, written by male scribes, often focused on the battles of sons and generals. But modern research reveals another side of the empire's success. Genghis Khan recognized that his daughters were often more trustworthy than his sons. He used marriage alliances not to weaken them but to strengthen their power. By making them queens and governors, he ensured that newly conquered regions stayed loyal to him while his armies marched on. This unique strategy allowed his empire to grow faster than any other in history. The idea of women ruling vast lands might seem unusual for the 13th century, but in the Mongol world, it made perfect sense. The steppe environment had always required women to share in leadership, as men were often away at war or on long migrations. Genghis Khan's genius was not only in conquest but also in recognizing and formalizing this reality. His daughters were placed in charge of territories from China to Central Asia. They collected taxes, kept trade flowing, and punished rebels. In doing so, they became the backbone of his empire. This story, therefore, is not just about Genghis Khan the Conqueror. It is about a family system of power where daughters held the keys to stability. The empire was not only built by horsemen charging into battle but also by women who stayed behind to govern wisely. Understanding how these daughters made him great gives us a fuller picture of one of history's most remarkable leaders. It also challenges the way we view gender roles in the past, showing that women were not merely supporting characters but central architects of empire. When Genghis Khan began expanding his rule beyond Mongolia, he faced a challenge that swords alone could not solve. Conquering new land was one thing, but keeping it loyal was another. Many tribes were quick to rebel as soon as his army left. To solve this, Genghis developed a clever marriage strategy. Instead of marrying his daughters off as passive brides, he turned them into political rulers who anchored his empire in distant lands. The system was simple but brilliant. A daughter of Genghis would be married to a powerful local ruler. However, that husband was required to leave his homeland and serve in Genghis Khan's army. This removed potential rivals while also giving Genghis loyal soldiers for future conquests. Meanwhile, his daughter would remain in the conquered territory and govern it directly. This way, the land was not only tied to the Mongol dynasty but also managed by someone Genghis trusted completely. For example, his daughter Alaqai Beki was married into the Untold, a Turkic people who lived on the edge of China. Instead of becoming a shadowy figure in her husband's household, she became the true authority in the region. She managed trade routes, collected taxes, and represented Mongol power. Her leadership stabilized the area so thoroughly that rebellions were rare. Other Mongol armies could then push further west and south without worrying about their rear. This marriage system was revolutionary compared to the customs of many kingdoms at the time. In Europe, noblewomen were often used as pawns, sent away to foreign courts where they had little control. In the Mongol Empire, Genghis flipped this tradition upside down. His daughters were not absorbed into foreign dynasties. Instead, foreign dynasties were absorbed into the Mongol system through them. The husbands became outsiders, while the daughters held the keys to power. Through these marriages, Genghis not only secured loyalty but also built an empire that could stretch across thousands of miles. His armies might win the battles, but it was his daughters who held the lands together afterward. Without their governance, the empire would have collapsed under the weight of its size. The Mongol strategy was not just about destruction, it was about building a political order. And in that order, his daughters were at the very center. One of the most influential daughters of Genghis Khan was Alaqai Beki. As mentioned earlier, she was married into the Untold people who controlled a strategic region near northern China. After her husband was called to serve in the Mongol army, Alaqai Beki ruled the land herself. She organized defenses, managed food supplies, and ensured trade routes were safe. Traders passing along the Silk Road often praised the stability of her lands, which helped expand Mongol influence even without war. Another daughter, Al-Altun, became the queen of the Uighurs. The Uighurs were an educated, literate people who played a vital role in administration across Central Asia. By marrying his daughter into this culture, Genghis Khan not only secured their loyalty but also gained access to skilled scribes and administrators. Al-Altun herself maintained authority in her husband's absence, overseeing the collection of tribute and settling disputes. Her rule blended Mongol toughness with Uighur sophistication, strengthening the empire's political backbone. Chechiagan, another of Genghis Khan's daughters, was married into a tribe in Siberia. Her land was far from the center of the empire, yet it was no less important. Siberian tribes provided valuable resources such as furs, horses, and manpower. Chechiagan's ability to manage these territories meant that the empire could rely on a steady flow of goods. She acted as both ruler and diplomat, making sure the tribe stayed loyal while also keeping the peace between rival groups. The youngest daughter, Tumalun, was married into a powerful Central Asian clan. Though less is recorded about her compared to her sisters, historical notes suggest she, too, wielded authority in her own right. Like her sisters, Tumalun governed when her husband was away, showing the consistency of Genghis Khan's policy. Each daughter, regardless of where she was placed, followed the same model: marry into power, but hold the reins of rule directly. Together, these daughters ruled over territories that stretched from China's borders to the steppes of Central Asia and Siberia. Collectively, they governed more land than Genghis Khan's sons during his lifetime. While the sons were often focused on military campaigns or competing with each other for succession, the daughters maintained steady control. Their quiet but firm governance was one of the main reasons why the Mongol Empire did not collapse during its rapid expansion. The daughters of Genghis Khan did more than rule lands; they became the empire's economic foundation. They managed taxation systems, ensured merchants were protected, and kept caravans safe along the Silk Road. Wealth poured into the empire because trade routes were stable under their watch. Unlike generals, who won glory in battle, the daughters won loyalty by creating prosperity. This balance of war and peace allowed the empire to survive rapid expansion. Their rule also freed Genghis Khan's sons to focus on military conquest. The sons often quarreled among themselves, competing for inheritance and glory. Genghis recognized this weakness, which is why he trusted his daughters more with administration. While the men were distracted by ambition, the women governed with efficiency. In many ways, the daughters were the glue holding the empire together while the sons threatened to tear it apart. Sadly, after Genghis Khan's death, the daughters' power began to fade. The empire's succession struggles favored the sons and grandsons, who erased much of the daughters' legacy from official records. Over time, their contributions were buried beneath stories of battles and male rulers. Yet, during Genghis Khan's lifetime, their importance was undeniable. Without their steady governance, the Mongol Empire could not have grown into the largest contiguous empire in history. Modern historians have begun to rediscover the role of these forgotten queens. They ruled lands larger than many European kingdoms, commanded respect from their subjects, and carried forward their father's vision of unity. By studying them, we see that Genghis Khan was not a solitary genius but a leader who built his empire through family networks. His daughters were not pawns but partners in power. Their story reshapes how we understand both the Mongols and medieval history. In the end, Genghis Khan's daughters truly made him. They gave him the stability he needed to continue conquering, the wealth that kept his army supplied, and the loyalty that bound diverse peoples into one empire. Their forgotten story is not just about family but about the unseen half of history, the women who ruled when the men rode away. To tell the story of Genghis Khan without his daughters is to leave half the empire in shadow. With them, the picture is finally complete.